All right, welcome back to the channel. Hey, this is Cdub, and today we have Jon, the basketball card guy. Man, thanks again for joining us. How's your day going?
Oh, it's good. It's good. Busy day, but it's nice to do this at night. So I love chatting cards.
Awesome, awesome. Man, I really just want to say again, I really appreciate you taking the time. I know we met before, so this is our second time getting a chance to really talk and have a discussion. Maybe we can go ahead and start off with like a recap. I know you had a chance to go to the recent national show. Maybe you can
Yeah.
just kind of explain your experience there, and we can just start there.
Yeah. I mean, I've been to a few nationals now and a few national sports collector conventions. And this one was particularly interesting. I did a little bit of corporate work this year that I hadn't done before. But was also back in the Northeast. And so I live
Mm,
in Connecticut. So it was a drive instead of a plane ride to get there. And I actually I really like the venue. For anyone that hasn't been there, it's like a huge rectangle, and it's easy to find things. Nice air conditioning in there, really bright lights, so you can actually see the cards. You don't feel like you're in a basement. So it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun getting out there and just meeting up with folks I hadn't seen in a while, meeting new people that I'd only chatted with on Instagram before. Is always
right.
a highlight for me as well. I was one of very few people wearing a mask, and yet still people came right up and were like, "You're that guy." So it was awesome. Um,
That's
I
cool.
did a lot of trades and card purchases from people on IG instead of I did very few vendor deals actually.
Mm,
I found that I don't know if it was just because I was busy or I was getting pulled in a million directions, but I would meet somebody for 5 minutes that we had an IG conversation, and they would bring me a card that I saw on their page, and I would just pay them for the card and grab it there. So a lot of my deals were kind of done on the floor, just from people
wow.
I knew online. So that was a different experience too. It was like ordering ahead and then just picking up your meal, like at the restaurant. That's what it felt like.
That's
But it was
funny.
very
That's
cool.
cool. So what do you think about how did it go as far as the foot traffic? I know that there could be concerns with COVID and stuff like that. How was the foot traffic there?
Foot traffic was good. I mean, there were a lot of people there. It's funny. I would say that about 70%, and I'm not exaggerating. I originally said 60%, but then a couple days later, started to realize more and more. I'd say about 70% of the people I met there ended up with COVID after the event.
Mm,
I mean, it was like
wow.
a super spreader. I think part of that is there was no masking anymore, really. I remember my family has a condition, so I was more conscious of it. So I was wearing a mask. But, I think people are kind of done with it. The new kind of form of the virus, the latest strain, isn't as severe for most people. So I think there was a lot more laxness there.
Got it.
But yeah, so I think the concerns were down. I think people weren't as concerned at this point, and so they
Yeah.
showed up. And there were a ton of people there. It was wider pathways than Chicago had the previous year, so it was easier to kind of, make your way around and not really have to be as concerned with being too close to people. It didn't feel claustrophobic,
Got it.
this time. It was more comfortable. But yeah, I mean, especially Saturday, people really showed up. Friday and Saturday. I was there I got there Tuesday, the day before it opened, and I was there right through Sunday, almost until it closed on Sunday. So, yeah, I would say the hobby is definitely alive. I could tell you that. Being at that show, a lot of excitement. Just people really wanting to be there, wanting to interact, wanting to see some great cards. And see the people they only see once a year or once every few years.
Right. Now, I know you talked about how at this show you were able to do a little bit of work with maybe some other vendors. Is there anything that you can share about that? And what was that
Yeah,
experience like?
sure. Yeah. So I worked with three corporates this year. Beckett was the largest. It's the name that everyone recognizes. I did their giant video walls.
Nice.
And so in previous years, they kind of just had a curtain, and they'd have like graders behind the curtain doing raw card review and encapsulations and stuff. This year, I was able to create some awesome video creative that brought it to the next level. 20-foot wide, 10-foot tall. Actually, they're probably 15-foot tall video walls. So just
Wow.
imagine like being at a concert, what you see there. that was the display. So one on either side and then some black curtain in the middle so that you could get back to the back if you were a grader. So that it was really next generation. And a lot of people commented on that I spoke with. They're just like, wow, this is like not what I was expecting after seeing, what they were last year and the year before, that kind of a thing. So I did a lot of video work for them in prep of that. Even in the hotel during, like, adjusting things and just to make sure that they had the most relevant information up on those giant screens. We had Luke the Cardist, who's a card art guy who he actually did this card. I have one here. He actually uses markers over existing cards. Like, so this one where Jordan's dunking over Ewing, he put in the whole shoe, the basketball, all of this stuff. He did freehand on the card. Crazy.
That's pretty cool.
So we brought him in this year to be at the Beckett booth and to do live card art, like as people were coming around. And I did a feature video of him up on the screens, showing some of his work, like doing like an Allen Iverson card and some different cards that he was doing this for. And then we gave a bunch away, which was the highlight. So folks that were coming and visiting, signing up for a new service called Beckett Collect that's going to be coming out soon, were able to enter to win some of this original art from Luke the Cardist. So that was exciting, different, again, just kind of breaking the mold there. And then I worked with two others, Roadshow Cards. So Jimmy's Kentucky Roadshow was the original store. It's expanded out. There's a New York Roadshow now. There's a Texas Roadshow, and there's soon to be a California Roadshow. I did all the branding for all of those stores. I did the T-shirt design for them at this event. They were giving out a ton of T-shirts. And they're also the guys that run the official trade night. So like really big presence there. There were several thousand people there in another ballroom in the same conference center, in the same convention center rather. So just an incredible experience all the way around there. And then I also worked at Piece of the Game, which is it's currently one store, but going to be a chain of stores, starting in New York, moving into New Jersey as well. That's a very high-end premium store. It feels like you're in a very expensive jewelry store, like you walked into a Tiffany's, like when you walk in there, literally the museum glass, rounded display cases, just high end everything. They have a huge collection of like autographed and game used baseballs. They've got, memorabilia. They've got Pokemon cards too. They got everything under the sun, but it just feels more premium the way they present it. And so I did a video for them spotlighting their actual physical store that's in Wappingers Falls, New York. It's about an hour and a half outside of New York City because a lot of people weren't going to be able to go there physically. There weren't like shuttle buses to it or anything. So I did a video feature I shot within their store, a 3-minute video that we put on loop that allowed people to see, wow, that's a really premium, cool experience. And then the rest of their booth was modeled after what the actual store looks like. So the videos were up on 2 big TV screens that they had up on that kind of pseudo store, and then the rest of it was just kind of that same kind of branded feel. So I get to work with all 3 of those guys this year, which is totally different for me because I was always the guy that was just running around buying cards, and meeting up with friends. And this was, I own a video production company, and so this is something that I was able to do, as an extension of what I do for clients that aren't in the hobby. I was now working with some big ones in the hobby as well. And it was just a ton of fun.
That's cool. That's awesome. I know you talked about the foot traffic a little bit, and you talked about how you felt like the hobby is strong. How would you describe like the current state of the hobby? I mean, I know depending on what you look at on social media, you can get just a wide range of different opinions, but how would you describe the current state of the hobby and maybe 1 or 2 things that maybe a new collector can look out for or be aware of?
Yeah. I think the quick flip is done. I think that whole notion of kind of entering into this without a lot of knowledge about what you're doing, you just kind of, some people did the, buy raw, grade, and then flip, where you're basically selling that raw card that's now graded and you're making a margin on that. That was the most common practice, I think, in the last 2 years, where people were flooding in and finding that they could make that money. I think a lot of people got stuck with some of those graded cards and found that they don't have anyone they can sell them to now. So, you know, I did a video a couple of years ago about this whole kind of deal, and I called it, you know, it's like a game of hot potato. You know, everyone wins along the line until the last person that's left holding the bag. And that's what a lot of this stuff was, inflated values over time, that people that hadn't been in the hobby for years previous to that to see other cycles didn't understand that that's what was happening. And so they were jumping in and just thinking, oh, wow, this just, you enter now, and if you get out in 3 months, you make money. If you get out in 6 months, you make more money. You get out in 9 months, you make more. Whoever holds the cards the longest is just going to make more money. That's the kind of mentality that a lot of people had, that it just was always going to go up. And like any market, you know, it's only a market if it goes up and down, right? So that's kind of a situation that we're in with a lot of those types of cards. That being said, a lot of stuff is still going up. A lot of the more desirable things, and it can be based on player. You know, I can really only talk to the basketball stuff. I don't collect the other sports, but you know, Michael Jordan stuff continues to go up. LeBron James stuff is the only ones that I saw kind of a downtick, but that had little to do with the market, more to do with he wasn't in the playoffs. You know, like this is they missed it. And so a lot of people started kind of feeling down on him. And so his stuff has continued to kind of come down in price. I picked up a couple of LeBron James rookie cards Topps ones that I never had before just the other day, because I'm like, well, these are really low now, you know, like I could finally get into them. The advice I always give people has been the same advice I've given people since I was 14 years old working in a card store. And that's buy the stuff that you really love, the stuff that resonates with you, the stuff that you say, I would rather have that card than the money in my hand. You never go wrong, because you'll have that card as long as you want it, you know? And that's, if you're looking to eventually sell it, if you're looking to eventually turn that around and make a profit, then there's other strategies that you really have to look at more carefully if that's your method. But if you're in the hobby and it's truly a hobby, you know, you're getting enjoyment out of doing it, then buying the things that really resonate with you, you'll never fail. You know, you see something, you love it, you can afford it, buy it, you know, enjoy it. They're works of art, you know, each one of these cards, at least that's how I feel. So I think that the people that were doing that have found that it's just fine still. I've always found that, other than my kind of side collections, I've always found that my kind of core collections of like Michael Jordan cards and Kobe Bryant cards and things like that, they tend to continue to go up, or at least stay the same. They don't really lose value because there's plenty of demand for them. You know, the cards that I pick up, you know, tend to be like limited to 100 or less. So there's more than 100 people out there that want the card that I have. So you can be pretty confident that the value is not going to drop out on it. So those are kinds of the advice pieces. But I think the market as a whole it's strong for the hobbyists. It's strong for the people that were in this for a long time. It's also strong for people who came into it and were enjoying it and weren't throwing all of their money at it. You know, I for the last couple of years, any money I put into it came from money that I took out of other cards. So I would sell a card and then I would buy stuff with that money. And so it wasn't that kind of risk area where you were like, oh, let me dump my 401k and just throw it into cards because they're on fire, you know, like that's never a good idea. So so I think that's, you know, kind of the core difference. And if you're following a trend instead of following your heart on something, I think there's a problem there too. Like if you don't fundamentally understand why something is worth something, don't blindly buy it. You know, NFTs were that way. We saw that, you know, pretty big. We saw that in crypto too, where folks bought into those things. I don't understand crypto. I don't own any crypto. I won't own any crypto until I do understand it and feel like it's something I want to do. Same with NFTs. Like I own one NFT for somebody that I believe in them. And so I bought their NFT, you know, like that's, and it wasn't expensive, you know? So like those kinds of things, like if you don't understand it, you know, the general rule of thumb is don't jump in it, you know, don't drive your car through a puddle if you don't know how deep that puddle is. Right. We always hear those things. So that's how I treat it.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So you talked about, you know, how some people may have jumped in to the hobby with maybe not a lot of knowledge, and maybe they were trying to make a quick profit. And obviously in some of those cases, So what can you maybe give a quick description on maybe what kind of cards have maybe gone down in value? Is it certain cards that just the population has grown, or how could you
Yeah.
describe that?
It's a lot of the more common cards. So
Okay.
people describe it as base cards. So cards that you would get out of the pack most commonly that aren't a parallel. They're just a normal kind of run of the mill card that they make, literally hundreds of thousands of. So prime examples of that were like the Zion Williamson Prism rookie or the Luka Doncic Prism rookie card. Prism was it still is a card set put out by Panini that sold both in retail stores and also hobby shops. They make a lot of it. I would estimate that each card there's over 100,000 of, just based on population reports and everything on graded cards, on ones that people have sent in to get a grade on them, and then extrapolating from there. So when you think about that, if there's 100,000 of a particular thing out there, how valuable can it really be? And unfortunately, some people were drinking the Kool-Aid and believing that, it could be worth $2,000. Out of a pack that was originally $3, I pulled a card that they made 100,000 of. It's worth $2,000. It was kind of pipe dream, but as everyone kind of shook on it and agreed, yeah, no, let's treat it that it's that expensive. It just rose up. And then when the demand for that fell, when people started to really think about it more, that, well, why am I paying this for something that so many people have? Like, it's not that distinctive. It didn't come out of, like, they're charging more for the packs now, but when the pack originally retailed, it was only a couple of dollars. How could anything be worth that much if it's just the common card? I think people started using logic more, and maybe the other piece of it is eBay is the only place that a lot of people looked for values in the last couple of years. And it's not that you shouldn't use eBay as a source. I think it's a great source to understand what things have sold for on that marketplace. And it is the largest online marketplace. But there are plenty of other places you can sell cards, both online and in real life. Shows being the number one. So
Right.
card stores, your local card store is selling cards. And I guarantee they're getting different prices than the recent eBay comp, as people call it. So there's a lot of those things that people just weren't really taking into consideration, and they were using a number that was coming from eBay, a recent sale number, as gospel. Like, this is what the card is worth, not realizing that all it would take is two people to bid on one of those cards at whatever amount they want to create that comp, to create an artificial number, an artificial line, and keep moving that line up in a way that, became ridiculous. And that's exactly what happened over the course of the last couple of years. So that kind of stuff has come down. That kind of people wisened up and were like, wait a minute, I'm paying way too much for this. I shouldn't be paying $2,000 for a donut at Dunkin' Donuts. What am I doing? Like that kind of realization, yeah, a couple bucks. All right, we'll go for that, So
yeah, that's a good point. So speaking of comps, using eBay, relying on that for values. I did hear that at the National, you mentioned it to me off camera, and I heard other people say that the Wi-Fi there was not really good. And so how did that impact maybe how people were looking up comps or looking up values? How did that impact things?
Yeah, so a lot of people just couldn't. Some people actually left the building because I think it was just there were too many people there. It's like if you go to a concert, you get really poor signal too. Like, there's just too many people next to each other, all demanding that bandwidth. So people were leaving the building. I heard a story where one person left, did the comp outside, came back in, and the card was already sold, and they were really upset about it. But it's just like you're losing deals over it. It didn't affect me so much because I go on gut. I go again on, like, what would I pay for this card? What do I feel like is fair to me? Because I'm not planning on selling it. What price is there that I would rather have the card than the money? That's the question I ask myself all the time, where I'd be happy. And this situation was actually one where it's like, even though I'm sometimes tempted to go check the comps just to make sure I'm not crazy, like I'm not overpaying what I could get it online for if there's a lot of something. You really couldn't. You were kind of left without that. So I think some people didn't make deals at all because they felt Like it's kind of like the way I'd equate it is if you did every math test you ever did with a calculator, and now you didn't have the calculator, your calculator broke, and you had to do that test. You're too used to it. You use it. It's like a crutch. You rely on it. You're leaning on that too much. And so some people just didn't know how to do a deal because and part of that too, from my standpoint, is if you're trying to do a transaction on a card you know nothing about, like you don't even know the ballpark value, then maybe you shouldn't be trying to buy that card. Maybe it's not for you. I always tell people when they go to the National, like make a list, like make a top 10 list of things that you're looking for, because there are so many cards there. You're going to find, probably 5 out of the 10 on that list in the building. So don't get distracted by 100 other things not on your list, when you could find the things you really wanted and set out for from the start. So I think that forced some people into those zones, because if you have a top 10 list, you know exactly what you're willing to pay for each of those 10 cards. Those are cards you really want. Yeah, and you don't need comps then. You already know. You've got a price in your mind. So that I hope that's what it led a lot of people to. I hope that it was good. But it was. I heard people complaining about it left and right. And I felt bad for the Breakers Pavilion, because there were like probably 100 breakers there that were doing live card breaks, and they didn't have internet either. So they couldn't do these things live. They had people buying spots in their break, and they're paying for a team, and then they open up the packs, and then they couldn't broadcast it to those people. So I think that was a big problem overall. But I thought it may have done some good, in getting people to kind of buy things on their gut a little bit more, which I always like to see, because I don't feel like you go wrong there. Again, like if you love it, you'd rather have that than the money. There's no problem at all.
Right. So why don't we talk a little bit about, if you're okay with, I know we have some questions in the chat,
Cool.
but maybe we can get to those a little bit later.
Sure.
I wanted to see, I know you might have picked up some cards at the National. Maybe we can talk about maybe what you got and just describe it.
So one of the coolest things about a show that's that big is that they also bring in a lot of athletes, guest athletes, people to come and do signings. And so to me, that's one of the cool parts, where you can meet, not just get an autographed card or an autographed photo, but meet the athlete that maybe you idolize, or maybe you've been collecting for years. And so I got a few cards signed there, an Allen Iverson and blue paint marker, which looks cool on a finest rookie card. Nice. I met Tim Hardaway. I had him sign a couple of cards for me, this Prism in a nice blue across the center. And then this Warp Speed card I've had since I was a kid. Just awesome to be able to get that signed too, an old school 90s insert. I got to spend a lot of time with Mitch Richmond. A friend of mine hooked me up with a role where I was counting his autographs for him. So when these athletes do these signings, they actually have someone following them around. You'll look for this the next time you go to a signing. Someone follows them around with a piece of paper, and they're checking off every time they sign an autograph, because they need to get paid for every autograph. That's usually how the contracts are done. So every time you're checking it off, they're getting a certain amount of money for that. So I had to follow Mitch Richmond around for an hour as he signed over 800 autographs.
Wow.
And so I got to chat with him and like see all this crazy stuff he was signing, like basketballs with all Hall of Famers that these guys were like, these kids and grown people were literally going across the country with. Like they had 20 signatures on them already. Like it's just awesome stuff. And so I brought a couple of cards and I got them signed. And this one was pretty special because it's a motion card, which is really cool to show on video. He had never seen this card before. And so he was really jazzed about it. He was like, oh man, like, this is so cool. He's like, I've never seen this. I'm like, well, I'm glad, and so he signed that one for me. And then I had him sign my Slick Silver as well. Another 90s insert that I think looks great.
That looks awesome.
When you've got it signed. And then finally, Chris Mullen, who I've run into a bunch, different events and things. He's been involved in some of the businesses that I've been involved in as well. And he was at the opening of the New York Roadshow, part of Roadshow Cards network. And so I got to meet him there. But I got to meet him again at the National, and I picked up this card in a $3 box. There was one vendor that was just selling everything for $3. So there's a game-worn jersey. It's numbered to 250. But I was like, that is a perfect card to get signed. I mean, there is a perfect spot for an autograph on that. It looks like it should be signed, doesn't it? I mean, it's just...
Yeah, it definitely does.
Yeah, so I had him sign that. It was awesome. And then I also brought a Beam Team. I broke up my set for the time being and had him sign that one and inscribe at Hall of Fame 2011. So that was like the first part, was just being able to go there and get some cards that I already owned upgraded, so to speak, by getting some autographs on them. I like that aspect. Then I went after a few like bigger cards that I was looking for, where I'm completing sets or trios. I like to put together, for anyone that's followed me on Instagram at Basketball Card Guy, you'll see like my whole collection is, it's either sets or there are things that can be grouped together. So I like, grouping like a shoe, an autographed shoe with a shoe card. I like that aspect, like having the two. Or I like getting 2 or 3 cards out of the same set. I mean, I just posted, you can't really see them here, but these 3 cards behind me here are 3 jersey cards from the same set of Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and LeBron James. I don't have the whole set, but I have those 3, and so that's special to me.
Right.
This card actually marks the 3rd one in a trio. I don't have the other 2 sitting here. Otherwise, I haven't actually put them all together yet. It's kind of embarrassing. It's been over a week, 2 weeks now since I've been back. I really need to. But I've been collecting the limited logos sets out of Exquisite for a while. They're very expensive now and very hard to complete some of these groupings. But I've owned a Michael Jordan for a long time, and that's the most expensive one. So with that out of the way, it's like I got to get the others. So I got a Dennis Rodman about maybe 6 months to a year ago, and I finally got the Scottie Pippen at the show. Again, this was from someone on Instagram that I met at the show. He said, "Hey, I have this. Is this something you're looking for?" And I'm like, "Yes, it is." I would love that card. And so I picked this one up. Great patch, but that's what these are about. They have a nice big patch, autograph, numbered to 50. All of the years of limited logos were numbered to 50, except for the first year and the last year. The first year they're numbered to 75, and the last year they had some funky numbering. I think they were running out of patches or something. I don't know, but love this design. This is the same design I have the Rodman in, and then the Jordan is in another set a year later. This is the only set that Scottie Pippen signed in, the limited logos. This is the only year he was in it. So that was a great one to pick up. Grab this Jordan. I love these. I mean, this is Court Masters. It's like semi-translucent, as you can see.
Yeah.
Really cool. But I got this from Indie Card Exchange, which is a really awesome store that I've never been to yet. Got to meet the owner there. And he came up and was like, "I really want to meet you." And I'm like, "Man, I really want to meet you. This is awesome, to be able to see great stuff." He's a huge Jordan collector. So this coming from his collection into mine means a lot to me too. The fact that, it kind of made that path. And then last but not least, this one was one that I've been looking for a while. It's funny, I'd taken it off of my list just because I had no success in finding one. And then there it was. It was a Kobe Bryant Rookie Rubies, which is the red parallel. They put red up in the, reverse here. Red here and red down in the type.
Yeah.
These cards are very hard condition-wise because a lot of people don't realize this. They weren't inserted into packs like the normal one. These cards were literally sitting on the top of the box when you opened the box of packs.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, they were like a box topper. If you've ever seen like a jumbo box topper that they put in, but they're not jumbo. So this card was flying around that box while
That's
it was
crazy.
sitting. Yeah, so a lot of them are just like, they're not like, this one's a 6, and it looks good as a 6. Like, it looks really good, but I could care less about the grade as long as the card looks good to me. And this one, realizing that it had been sitting on top of a box, looks pretty darn good. So really glad to add that to the collection. So those are some of the things, that I've been picking up. I do jump into like some celebrity cards. I can show that like real fast. I do like what Leaf is doing. I picked up this Meg Ryan card autograph, which I think is cool. You can get some of the stars from the the 90s as well. Billy Crystal.
Nice.
And so, yeah, even though like they don't have the license for sports, they're making great cards, and they're using the same papers. When you recognize the effects on this paper is like coming out of Optic or or those kinds of things. They did snake skin on this, which is, clearly a takeoff of like the Mamba, Kobe Bryant stuff in basketball. So I like that kind of like melding of those areas.
Nice.
When it kind of moves from my basketball collecting into my non-sport collecting too. So.
Got it. It's funny that you talked about the grade on that card, that Kobe card. I was going to ask you right before you said it, is that something that you really care about is grades? And it sounds like you already answered it, but maybe you could talk a little bit more about that, like your opinion on that.
Yeah. Well, I think so. So grading has become, especially in the last 2 years, has been a value add. So if you can get a high grade on a card, it can add a lot of value to it. But then I just feel like people are buying the case and not the card at that point. Because if you're only really looking at, it's a Gem 10, you're paying way too much attention to that label and you're not paying attention to what's inside the plastic case.
Right.
So to me, like, I generally look for cards that are going to be near mint to mint. They don't have to be, they could be raw, they could be graded. It doesn't really matter. I look for cards that don't have any noticeable flaws, so that they don't bother me when I look at them. If there was a card that's like way off centered, or it's got a bent corner, or like that would bother me. So like I try and avoid those cards, as much as I can. And so that's really it for me. I always say to people, like, I have two eyes too. So does a grader. And so as long as it looks good to me, it's good enough for my collection. If I find the cards that I do buy graded, I generally buy graded because I couldn't find them raw. Like I haven't been able to find a Kobe Bryant Rubies, at that show other than this one. So picking up this one, it's fine that it's graded. That works. Same thing with the Jordan. So the ones that I have, I didn't buy because of the grade. I bought because I liked the card.
Got it. That's really cool. I think that's really cool. And I think it kind of goes against maybe what might be seen as the most popular opinion. I talk about that with one of my friends. He's like, man, some of the cards I enjoy, people at the National may not even care about it because, they talk a lot about high-end cards or super, crazy, cards that are worth, millions of dollars,
Yeah.
But let's actually go to the chat and see what questions
Sure.
we have. Let me scroll up here. Just want to say what's up to everyone in the chat and thanks for joining. Let's see. Let's see if I can find it. Oh man, I'm messing up here. I can't find it. I'm trying to find it. Let's see. I got my mom in here. I got my dad. I got Elliot.
I love it. I love the support system.
I know, family support. We got Blaze One Sports. Darren Herman was in here.
Yeah.
Let's see. I can't find it, but I know one of the questions that I saw earlier from my dad was, "What's one of your favorite Michael Jordan cards?" And I know last time you talked about you showed a Michael Jordan card, but maybe if you have some that you not necessarily that you have to show, but maybe you could just talk about.
I just like so many of them. A lot of the inserts, like pretty much this whole case that's next to me over here. I don't know if I probably can't move the camera. But this whole case here is basically Jordans that I love, for different reasons. But there's a lot of different inserts. In the 90s, like a lot of the new papers were being introduced. A lot of the new design ideas, like some of these cards are laser cut, where they literally shot lasers at them to make shapes. I mean, it's crazy. Some of them had like new foils, holograms. I mean, you name it. They're like, they kind of innovated in the way that things were being printed. And they all have something cool. And then like the bottom of the case is like all game worn stuff. So nice. I love any like Jordan game worn jerseys, game worn shoe. Those are like some of my favorite cards. I have a Jordan autographed shoe over in the case over here that I paired up with a card as well that has a piece of a game worn shoe in it. So those kinds of things, like, again, the pairings, I love. But anything that feels like it's a piece of the player. I did actually, from the National, I got this slabbed, which is a really sweet card too. This is a Jordan patch auto here that I have. That, again, anything that he's signed, a piece of something that he's worn in a game, like, to me, that's just awesome. Like it feels like it's a piece of the player. And when you look up to them so much, at some point in your life or your whole life, like, man, like that's just something special. Like, I'm one of the few people that own like a piece of him in that kind of way. So I would say certainly one of the jersey cards, the autograph cards, something that those would be absolutely at the top of my list of my Jordans.
Got it. Now, have you ever? It sounds like, if I remember correctly, you had Dennis Rodman sign a basketball for you. You talked about that last time.
That's right there. Yep.
Is it right there? Okay. And
Yep,
then,
right.
have you had a chance to get anything signed in person by Michael Jordan at all?
I have things that were signed in person by him, but I was not there for the signings.
Oh, okay.
So I got a couple of things that were signed by him at the Jordan camp. So this jersey actually is a camp signed jersey. Comes with the Upper Deck authenticated sticker on it, and then also the certificate from there. And I have a hat that he signed at the camp as well. It was one of the 1996 finals championship hats. I've been collecting those, trying to get them signed by like the whole team. So I have one signed by Rodman, one signed by Jordan. Then I have one that I got signed last year at the National by Ron Harper, Tony Kukoc, and Randy Brown. I've got another one unsigned that I just bought so that I can get more signatures going. Scottie Pippen is the one I really need next. So I've been thinking about that a lot.
Nice.
But yeah, it's just, it's, I've never had the opportunity to meet him. I hope I get to meet him. I'm hoping that with all the work that I've been doing in these different circles, that sometime that comes to fruition. I also am very much concerned that, anytime you meet your hero, you're not always, impressed, or, you don't always have the best experience. So I don't want it to burst my bubble either. I had a friend actually who is very big into collecting Allen Iverson, and I told him that there was a signing coming up in New Jersey. He went to the signing, and Allen wasn't very nice to him. And I mean, this guy has collected thousands of his cards, and just wanted to shake his hand and and have a chat for 10 seconds, and he was very dismissive to him. And anyone that knew this guy, that my friend, was just like, man, why did he do that to him? He's such a nice guy. Like,
right.
He has no idea like how much this kid idolizes. That's like, and so I have that fear a little bit. That I think that there's any of these guys. And look, I saw Allen Iverson at the National, and he was totally different there. Had a much better time, and he was at the parties, and he was playing roulette, and he was like in my hotel, and like all these things. So he was a different person in those moments.
Right.
So anyone can have a bad day,
Definitely.
and especially if you're sitting there and it's like, you're having to do monotonous stuff, like signing autographs. But we all hope that, it's that day you meet your hero, that it's a good day, and that it's not one of the bad
definitely.
days. So,
yeah, I think that's true. But unfortunately, we're all human, right? All these celebrities, and I think sometimes we can forget that, right? We just think they should be a certain way, and we hold them in a certain light. But that's a good point. Well, hopefully one day you do get an opportunity to meet Jordan, and I hope it goes well. I hope he's super awesome.
And me too.
And I hope that definitely comes to fruition for you. That would be awesome. So let's transition to another question that I had. What's something that you think we need more of in the hobby? Just, it could be anything that comes to your mind, something that you think we might need more of, or we could use more of in the hobby.
Transparency is like always my big thing with any of this. It's just people just being more transparent about stuff. I think in a lot of cases, like even if we look at breakers, even if we look at distributors, even if we look at local card shops, like start at the beginning on where you buy your packs. If there was a little bit more transparency there, even in the markups and how the business works and things like that. Like, I know I need to pay you more than you paid for the thing that you're selling me.
Right.
100%. You can't run a business. If you're in the business, you can't run a business and be selling stuff for at or below your cost. But more transparency around the cost, I think would help a lot of folks in a lot of those areas. There was, to use the example, National Treasures is a very expensive product these days,
right?
$4,000 to $6,000 a box, like an insane amount of money. But that jump took place back in 2019 in terms of basketball, that is.
Right.
You know, when there was a bounty set by one of the big distributors, I call them a distributor. They're also a retailer, but they had a lot of boxes, and they made a calculated call where they said, "Look, if you pull this one card out of this box, we'll give you $500,000 for it."
Wow.
And that box, before that bounty was set, that box was costing a local card shop $400.
Wow.
Once the bounty is set, right? Think about that. Once the bounty is set, now they're selling it. That local card shop is selling it for $4,000.
Mm.
And now the people that are offering the bounty, let's say they have 1,000 boxes of the product, you know, just as a nice round number. When you go from 400 to 4,000, you're making about $3.6 million in profit.
That's just crazy.
I'll peel off $500,000 for bounty, and there's someone hits the card, sure, and I'll still walk away with $3.1 million. Like, what? So I think some of that stuff, it got so skewed so quickly that people didn't understand that we're entering into it, that like the history of that wait a minute, that cost how much? Like I've told a few people that, like, yeah, it was under 400, and people are like, wait, no, you're not talking about the same product. And I'm like, no, the same exact product. Like,
right.
I know store owners, I know they got their allocations, like these prices, like, so sometimes, like, I think that transparency can go a long way, and that goes for people that are making deals on the side too. You know, people are sitting down. I always tell people, like I just said to you, like, I don't want to take a card from you at a price that's lower than what you paid, you know, especially when the market was rising. Like, wow, no, like, stop doing, just hold on to the card. It'll go up, like, you know. So I think that we could use more of that in the industry, where people are a little bit more transparent, a little bit more open, a little less angsty in deals. You know, I witnessed 2 deals when I went to a show this past Sunday. One where these 2 guys couldn't agree on a price, and it was like the one guy was basically just slammed his stuff, his cards closed, and walked away like, I'm taking my ball and going home, kind of like attitude. Just like, you know, how immature that looked. And then the other one where 2 guys didn't come to a deal either, but they were both like, oh man, I totally respect that. No hard feelings at all. Like, you need to get that, I get it. And I need to get this for this. I'm better off selling it there. Totally cool, awesome. Shake hands anyway, awesome. That's how the deal should be done. You know, a lot of people, I heard for a long time, like, a deal is only a good deal if the 2 people in the deal both leave feeling uncomfortable. And I hate that notion. Like, if we did a deal, Cdub, you and I did a deal, and we both left and we felt uncomfortable, we would never do a deal again. Like, we wouldn't be looking forward to it. You know, like, so I never understood that. Like, I get the notion that people are saying, well, that means you both gave. You know, like, that it meets somewhere in the middle, that if you're both uncomfortable, that means that someone isn't taking advantage of the other person. I think, like, you can do a deal where both people like what they're getting out of the deal more than what they gave in the deal, and both people can both feel that same way. And I think that's key, and that's what gets people coming back. You know, you have that familiarity and and that kind of openness where you can say, you know, I would love to do a deal with you today, but there's nothing that we can do on these particular things, and it's all cool anyway because we're still friends. You know, like, done. You know, so
yeah, definitely. I feel like you know, if you make a good deal and you're able to kind of build some trust, like you said, it makes you more willing to say, hey, I'm going to go back. I'll go back to John, or I'll go back to so-and-so. And I, you know, and not feel that uncomfortable feeling. So that's one thing that I definitely enjoy about buying cards, building relationships, you know, feeling like, because once I buy some cards, I just feel like, oh, well, I can definitely go back to this guy and I don't have anything to worry about, you know?
Yeah, you develop that it's like any relationship, you know, you develop that trust, and like I always tell people, it's like it's as important for you to identify when you both can't do a deal as when you can. You know, you shouldn't have to force it. Just because you want something I have, or just because I want something that you have, doesn't mean we have to do a deal today. You know, and that's the tack that I take with it. You know, and you want to do right by people all the time. Look. The internet can be a very mean place, or it can be a very great place, you know. And I feel like if you do the right stuff, if you're always above board in everything that you're doing, like you overwhelmingly get the good out of it, and that's what's awesome.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. All right, so we have a question here. This is from my sister.
Yeah.
Do people ever lose their cards in the mail when they get them graded? Have you ever seen anything with this, or do you have any stories about this?
Yeah. So I won't name the person. It's a pretty famous account. I won't name them just in case it's not like a public thing that they don't want everyone to know about. But
Yeah, no worries.
Pretty large company and grader had a Jordan autographed All-Star jersey patch that was gorgeous. Something that like was one of the cards that I looked at like every time I saw it at a show. They sent it out to, I forget which grading company it was, so we won't put anybody on blast there anyway.
Sure.
They sent it out, and it was stolen in the post office on the way to the grading.
Wow.
And yeah, and the post office, with the insurance that they had through the post office, only covered a couple of $1,000s on what was about a $30,000 card. So it does happen. I've had cards both that I've shipped and that have been shipped to me that were stolen en route at a post office as well. I would advise people never, I don't have any around right now, never use the flat rate postage boxes that look like they'd hold a VHS tape, unless you're using a ton of tape. They are very easy for a postal employee to rip into, pull the contents out of a corner, and then flip the cardboard back in, and it looks like it hasn't been touched.
Wow.
So I had a Dennis Rodman regular autographics card that was coming to me that was stolen en route. Luckily, my post office actually calls me. They have me on speed dial. I'm there every day. And they actually called me while it was en route and said, "John, we're really sorry. We just got news that it feels like there's nothing in this box." So you can come to the post office. You don't have to accept delivery. And that's what you do if you ever receive something like that. Do not accept delivery. It's way easier on everybody if you've never held it. Because then for the postal insurance and everything, when they go back, it's all the post office's fault because it's somebody in that chain. If it never got to the recipient, there's no way that the recipient could have taken it out. Like, that's the bottom line. So he had me come in. He's like, "You can just don't touch it, but you can take pictures of it sitting on the desk here for anything that you need to do to send back to the seller. But we will be, returning it for you that way." Same thing happened. I shipped a Kobe Bryant, a really rare card, out to California. It was $2,500, and someone in the postal system in California stole it en route. The postal person who was delivering it realized that the box seemed really light. I had paid for like 2 pounds of postage on it, and so she was like, "There's not 2 pounds in here,
Right.
The person accepted delivery of it, but since they had notated in the tracking that it felt light and it looked like it had been tampered with en route, they were able to, flag it that way. I have insurance, separate insurance outside of the postal insurance that covers that stuff.
Yeah.
And that can be a whole separate episode on insuring your stuff. But they cover anything that I ship up to like $25,000 a shipment. So it's very good.
Wow.
And I did ship a $25,000 card once too. So like that was, it was a Jay-Z
Really?
autograph card. Yeah. Jay-Z, they call it a rookie, a finest autograph card, number to 15. I sold it on Loop, the app, which is a really great space for $25,000 and shipped that out, with that insurance in place. It's a lot cheaper to go through an outside insurer like that. That you have like continual insurance than to insure each individual package. And the other thing is, if you insure like a $25,000 package through the postal service, you're going to have like a big sticker that says you paid $400 for the shipment. And it's pretty obvious there's something valuable inside. big sticker with what you paid right on it. So you want to avoid that when you're going. But yes, they are, to answer the question. Yes, some of that stuff is lost on the way to grading. You should insure it. It's unfortunate because I always say, like, you don't want the money back. You want the card. And it's
Right.
really sad. Like this particular Jordan card was just so sad because it was just a distinctive patch. It was an amazing card. The thought of losing that, to me, it's just, same thing with the Kobe that I shipped off to the guy. It turns out that the person who bought it from me had actually worked with Kobe Bryant for a number of years.
Wow.
And he said to me, which made me feel even worse, he said, like, this was my way of like honoring Kobe. And I liked it because it came out of your collection, Jon. That was the other reason I was buying it. It was special to me because I know how much he means to you. And I'm like, see, now I just want to go find that employee and just grab the card back from him. You know, like it's just at that moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is something to worry about. But there's nothing you can do other than insuring it.
Got it. All right, so Jon, I think I want to ask one more question, and then we can probably wrap up here shortly. But what's one thing that you might see coming in the future? Maybe a trend, or maybe a new change in the hobby, and how it might impact the hobby. You know, anything that you can think of.
I think there's a big trend. I think there's going to be some sort of virtualization around cards. I think a lot of people try to do it with NFTs. They were trying to make, kind of a digital something that could sell. But I think a lot of people that were kind of core collectors want the physical item. So I think that's going to come through vaulting. And you see this pattern where every collectible company right now is working on some sort of a vault. And they're all approaching it in somewhat different ways. I mean, all of them have like kind of security at the core where you get to keep your item secured and you don't have to worry about insuring it yourself anymore at that point. Like that's cool. But the different ways that they're approaching accessibility, I think is where I think that's where the future is. And I think it could take a couple of years, but I think you're going to start to see more virtualization of those cards. I think for the high end cards, you see companies like Collectible and Dibs and these companies that do like fractional. You're going to start to see them do more of that too. And people that maybe instead of going out and buying a rookie card that they made 100,000 of, instead you'll buy a piece of a card that only 3 exist, and that, you've got a piece in that, and that asset itself should always grow because it's so rare, and that your piece grows along with it. That's what fractional is all about, is owning a small piece of something that's worth a lot more than you could afford to buy the whole thing. And then I think those companies will probably find a way to make it cool to own a piece of it. So that maybe you get like a virtual, like if you own a piece of the 52 Mantle PSA 10 or something, then you get some sort of virtual version of it that you can show people on your phone that says, no, seriously, I own a piece of that. I own a piece of that card. And only I can have this because I own a piece. As soon as I don't own it, they take it away. So I think that's where I see some of this stuff going with the new technology and stuff. It'll also be interested. I'm interested to see where Fanatics takes things with the licensing and everything in the years to come. I think they're going to probably buy up a couple more card companies that already exist because it makes sense for everybody. I mean, if we can't have too many Leafs, in that zone where you're going only on unlicensed cards. I think if you had 2 or 3 more of those companies, they'd be competing way too much for a small space. So I think we'll see some more of that as well, where these companies are coming together under one umbrella so that they can continue to do what they're doing.
Got it. Oh, well, I really appreciate it, Jon. I just want to say thanks again, man, for taking the time. And for all of you guys watching, definitely go check out Jon on Instagram at Basketball Card Guy. And Jon, like I said, I really appreciate it. I hope that one day we get a chance to meet in person.
Absolutely.
I wasn't able to go to National this past year, but we'll have to stay
Chicago
in touch.
next year. Chicago next year.
Chicago. Yeah, I got a plan for it. I got a whole year, so hopefully I can make it work.
Excuses.
Exactly. All right. I just want to also say to everyone who joined us in the chat, appreciate your guys' support, just all the questions. And Jon, once again, thank you. I appreciate it. And you take care, and we'll talk again soon.
Sounds great. Thanks, Cdub.
Hey, thank you.